The shopkeeper said it was free, but once we brought the funeral doll home, we realized the true price was our sanity. I'd always been close to my little sister Sarah. Our mother was always busy with work, and our father left us when we were young, so raising her mostly fell on me. She was 4 years younger than me, and this story took place when I was 18 and she was 14. My mother had just remarried a man named Ben, who seemed pretty nice to me. I didn't really mind him. He was wealthy enough to help support us, and he always treated my mother with respect, so I was fine with her being with him. Sarah, however, didn't feel the same way about Ben. Every night at dinner, she avoided Ben's gaze and never spoke to him unless he spoke to her first. She even avoided walking through the living room to grab snacks if he was on the couch watching TV. More than once, I had to go downstairs and get things for her instead. I chalked it up to her being uncomfortable around a stranger and assumed she'd get used to his presence over time. For her 14th birthday, Ben decided to try to win her over by taking her to the mall to pick out whatever gift she wanted. I thought she'd be thrilled by the idea, but she flat out refused to go with him unless I came along. Ben joked that she must really love her big brother and promised I could pick something out too if I joined them. So, of course, I went with them. We wandered around the mall, looking at clothes, bags, and other typically girly things Ben thought Sarah would like. She didn't like any of it. Sarah was pretty small for her age and looked much younger, so almost none of the clothes she tried on fit her. Meanwhile, I just followed along, waiting for us to reach a section with things meant for teenagers like me. Eventually, we came across a small antique shop tucked away in a quiet corner of the mall. I was bored and tired of walking, so I pointed it out to Ben and Sarah, hoping I could sit down inside and check my phone. Ben said a little girl like Sarah wouldn't find anything interesting in there, but Sarah insisted on taking a look since I suggested it. We three went into the antique shop, and I headed straight for the sports section where vintage sports items were displayed. Sarah wandered through the shop while Ben watched her from the entrance of the small store. Eventually, she stopped, and I looked up from a signed baseball card to see what had caught her attention. She was staring at an elegant glass display case filled with various trinkets that looked like they were several decades old. There were silver plates, a fine porcelain tea set, and something that looked like a gas lamp. But the centerpiece of the display was an antique doll placed at the very top of the cabinet. The doll was dressed like a noble woman attending a funeral, wearing a long black dress, black gloves, and a translucent black veil covering her face. When Sarah took the doll out of the cabinet and lifted the veil, it revealed a sad expression with large blue eyes that seemed to pierce my soul even from a distance. I told Sarah that she was holding a pretty gloomy-looking doll. To my surprise, she said she thought she wanted to buy it. I asked her why on earth she'd want something so depressing in her bedroom. She replied that she couldn't really explain why she liked it. Something about the doll resonated with her, she said. Sarah had always been strange like that. I thought she was a little too old to be playing with dolls, but I kept that to myself. She then went to ask Ben to buy it for her. As soon as the old shopkeeper saw which doll Sarah was holding, she told her she could have it for free. Apparently, she had been trying to get rid of it for years, but people kept bringing it back because of the sad atmosphere it gave off. She seemed delighted that such a beautiful doll had finally found a permanent home with someone who wouldn't be bothered by its appearance. Since we got the doll for free, Ben allowed Sarah to pick out something else in the store for her birthday. She ended up buying a navy blue dress that was far less depressing, which the shopkeeper said would look good on her new doll. Sarah decided to name the doll Sally. I picked out a wooden baseball bat autographed by a famous former player to impress my friends. Later that night, I was awoken by crying. I'm normally a very sleepy sleeper. Almost nothing can wake me once my head hits the pillow. But this crying wasn't normal. It didn't feel like I was hearing it with my ears, more like the sound was projected directly into my brain. I didn't understand how that was possible, but I decided to ignore it for the moment and talk to Sarah about it the next day. The next morning, I asked Sarah at breakfast if she had been crying during the night. Ben had already left for work that morning, so she was much more talkative than she usually was. She looked surprised by my question, but insisted that she hadn't made any noise the night before. She asked if I was okay, and I just dropped the subject. It was probably just a dream after all. With Ben gone and not hogging the TV, Sarah decided to spend the morning on the couch watching her favorite shows. I went back upstairs to my room, planning to spend the entire day playing on my PC. When I went back to my room, I noticed that Sarah's bedroom door was wide open. I assumed she had simply forgotten to close it and decided to do it for her so no insects would get inside. As I did, I caught a glimpse of Sally sitting on Sarah's nightstand. Her veil lifted. It looked like red tears were streaming from her blue eyes, staining her porcelain cheeks. I was shocked and slammed the door shut before retreating back to my room. I told myself it had to be my eyes playing tricks on me, or that Sarah had tried putting makeup on the doll, and I tried to forget about it. That night, I woke up again to the sound of crying, but something was different this time. I could feel the weight of something on the bed with me. My eyes snapped open, and I saw Sally sitting at the foot of my bed. Her blue eyes were leaking bloody tears. I instinctively kicked her off the bed. She fell to the floor, but instead of the sound of shattering porcelain, I heard a heavy thud, followed by the sound of small, hurried steps rushing out through my open bedroom door. I grabbed the baseball bat Ben had given me and rushed out of my room. I barely caught a glimpse of Sally's black skirt disappearing behind the partially open door to Sarah's bedroom. I violently flung the door open, bat in hand, fully prepared to smash that little doll to pieces. But what I discovered will haunt and shame me for the rest of my life. Ben was in Sarah's room, sitting on her bed, touching her in a way I would rather not describe. Ben's eyes widened when he saw me, and I completely lost control when I realized what he had been doing to my sister behind my back. The autograph on the bat was barely visible beneath the bloodstains after I finished beating Ben with it. When my mother heard the commotion and rushed into the bedroom to ask what was going on, Sarah broke down in tears, and I helped explain what had happened. She called the police and an ambulance, but not before helping me beat Ben even more. In the end, I was never charged with a crime. As for Ben, he's behind bars now, far away from my family. Sarah still keeps Sally with her, and I've learned to tolerate the occasional sound of small footsteps during the night. Some things about the doll are different now, though. These days, Sarah dresses her in the blue dress more often than the black one, and instead of a sad expression, Sally now wears a content smile on her porcelain face. Did Sally's smile give you chills? Tell me in the comments if you'd keep a doll like her. And before we unlock the next cursed cabinet, make sure you're subscribed. The shadows only reveal their secrets to those who follow. I moved into a new apartment shortly after graduating. My girlfriend moved in with me, and we were excited to start a new life together. The apartment was spacious but empty, almost completely unfurnished, so we had to buy a lot of things to fill it. As recent graduates working entry-level jobs, we had to look for the cheapest options possible. Antique shops and thrift stores became our favorite places to hunt for furniture. One day, while browsing for a coffee table in a second-hand furniture store, a sign caught my girlfriend's attention. It was a paper sign attached to a small ornate cabinet advertising a ridiculously low price. I'm no craftsman, but even I could see the amount of careful work that had gone into carving the floral patterns on the cabinet. Even in a thrift store, it should have easily been worth 3 times the listed price. I asked the shop owner why it was so cheap, and he told me it was slightly defective. I asked what he meant by that. He explained that the cabinet's key was missing, making it practically useless except as a decoration. My girlfriend tapped me on the shoulder and said she could probably pick the lock if we bought it. As for why she knew how to do that, let's just say we hung around the wrong people in high school. We bought the ornate cabinet along with the wooden coffee table we'd been looking for. While carrying the cabinet out to the car, I was surprised by how incredibly heavy it was. It also felt like something was moving inside. I was excited by the idea that something unknown might be hidden within it. It could even be a treasure we could sell for more than the cabinet itself. Once we got home, I carried the coffee table into the living room and set it down. My girlfriend immediately placed the cabinet on top of it. She spent the next hour trying to pick the lock, using everything from hairpins to paper clips, with a true crime documentary playing on the TV in the background. Whoever had made the cabinet clearly didn't want it opened without the key. You'd think that would have discouraged us, but instead it only made us more determined. We figured that if someone had taken such precautions, whatever was inside had to be valuable. Jewelry, antiques, or even bundles of cash. I suggested forcing the cabinet open several times, but my girlfriend pointed out that it could damage whatever was inside. Besides, it really was a beautiful piece of furniture. It would have been a shame to destroy it. Eventually, my girlfriend managed to unlock the cabinet using a hairpin and a sewing needle. She turned the lock and opened the cabinet, and we finally saw what was inside. We were mildly surprised to find that the cabinet was filled with hay. After removing a few handfuls of hay, we discovered what it had been hiding. Beneath the hay, which was likely meant as padding, was a small, unopened bottle of red wine. Most of the bottle was made of translucent green glass, but the neck was decorated with finely engraved silver. There was no label, but judging by the bottle's appearance, it must have been something very refined. My girlfriend and I exchanged a smile. After a full day of hunting for second-hand furniture and forcing open a complicated lock, we could really use a drink. I grabbed 2 wine glasses, and my girlfriend opened the bottle with a corkscrew. We immediately regretted that decision. A nauseating stench, a mix of cat urine and rotten fruit, filled the air the moment the cork was pulled. I fought the urge to vomit. My girlfriend, who was holding the bottle, immediately set it down and ran to the bathroom to throw up. I joined her moments later. After emptying our stomachs and calming down, we shared an embarrassed laugh. It was a bottle of wine that had been locked inside what was probably a century-old cabinet. We played rock, paper, scissors to decide who had to go into the living room and dump the bottle. Of course, I lost. I held my breath and pinched my nose with one hand while gripping the bottle by its base and pouring it into the sink. The liquid I had assumed was red wine was actually black and viscous, flowing slowly with an almost muddy consistency. Once the bottle was emptied, I opened all the windows, stepped outside for a deep breath of fresh air, then cleaned it out. Despite what it had contained, the bottle itself was still beautiful. I was certain the silver decorating its neck would be worth something at a pawn shop. I let my girlfriend know when the coast was clear. We placed the now empty cabinet on the kitchen counter. We put our own bottle of wine inside it and left it there. The next day, we went out furniture shopping again. When we returned home and unloaded our purchases, we were exhausted. My girlfriend suggested opening the bottle we had placed inside the cabinet the night before. The moment we opened it, the same rancid smell came back with a vengeance. Strangely enough, the wine from our new bottle had turned rotten, just like the one from the cabinet. I poured the bottle down the sink, and just like before, the liquid was thick, black, and foul. Once the smell had faded, we sat down to talk about what had happened. We concluded that the cabinet must have spoiled our wine, strange as that sounded. That said, it was still a beautiful piece of furniture that could sell for a decent price. So we decided to list it online to make some quick cash. It might sound selfish, but we needed the money, and we assumed anyone would be smart enough not to drink wine ruined by something that smelled that horrible. The next morning, we woke up to the same rancid smell of cat urine and rotten fruit. The moment the smell hit our noses, we fled the apartment into the hallway, only to find the same unbearable odor there. Most of our neighbors were also outside their apartments. They all looked like they were on the verge of vomiting. A crowd had gathered at the front desk to complain about the smell. I heard one neighbor say something about the water turning black. Pinching my nose, I ran back into our apartment and turned on the kitchen faucet. Sure enough, a black, nauseating liquid came pouring out. Panicking, my girlfriend and I loaded the cabinet into the trunk and drove into the city. We went to a pawn shop on the other side of town and sold it for barely more than what we'd paid for it. Even the shop owner seemed surprised by how quickly we accepted his offer, but he didn't ask any questions. The apartment's water remained black and foul-smelling for several days before finally returning to normal. The police came to examine the black substance, fearing a case of mass poisoning. I didn't learn the results of the police lab tests until long after the black water disappeared. According to them, traces of human blood and liquefied organs were found in the substance. The investigation continued, but the leading theory was that a sewer worker had died on the job, and his remains had contaminated the water supply. But I know what really happened. To this day, I regret not destroying that cabinet when I had the chance. The pawn shop owner told me it had already been sold when I went back to try to buy it. If I ever find it again, I'll burn it once and for all. Maybe then, the tortured spirit inside it can finally find peace. My father died suddenly, not long after I graduated. According to the police, he died in a boating accident on the lake behind his house. He left me the house in his will, and I decided to move back in after the funeral. I had planned to get my own apartment after finishing my studies, but I couldn't leave my childhood home abandoned. The moment I arrived, I immediately noticed all the changes the house had gone through during my absence. The photos of my mother that once lined the walls had been replaced with pictures of the woman my father married after she died. I never liked her. She was too pretentious and thought she deserved everything my father could give her. What he ever saw in her, I'll never understand. I decided to take all of those photos down. If I had to guess, she had probably insisted that every picture in the house be of her, and sometimes her cat. I silently thanked my father for leaving the entire house to me, instead of forcing me to share it with her. I only wished she'd had the decency to clean up before the court had her removed. The entire house was a complete mess. Scratches covered the walls, most likely from my stepmother's cat, and several pieces of furniture had been knocked over or damaged. She had probably caused all this destruction in a fit of rage. After learning my father hadn't left her anything, I spent my entire first day back in my childhood home, cleaning up her mess. That evening, I opened an old guest bedroom and was surprised to find a small makeshift art studio. Shelves filled with tubes of paint filled the room, and several paintings hung on the walls. I knew my father had taken up painting recently, but I had no idea how talented he was until I discovered his studio. Most of the paintings were landscapes depicting familiar places. Many showed the nearby forest, the local park, or even houses in the neighborhood. But the undisputed centerpiece of the collection was the one that hadn't yet been framed. It was a beautiful painting of the back of the house, including the massive lake where my father died. Floating far out on the lake, too distant to make out clearly, was the same blue boat that had capsized. The sight of it made me sad. It reminded me of my father's death and proved the artistic talent he had discovered far too late in life. I decided to frame the painting and hang it in my bedroom so I could remember my father and the talent he never got to fully explore. That night, I fell asleep staring at the deep blue waters of the lake in my father's painting. I kept thinking about what to title it, and before I knew it, morning had come, and I had to go to work. Before leaving, I officially named the painting something that had come to me in a dream: Sapphire Lake. When I returned home after a long, exhausting day at work, I went straight to my bedroom to take a nap. But just as I was about to close my tired eyes, I noticed something strange about the painting. I could have sworn the boat, barely visible the day before, looked larger. I eventually brushed it off and took my well-earned nap. When I woke up, I opened my eyes to see that the painting had changed again. This time, the blue boat was halfway to the shore, and two human figures were clearly visible inside it. One of them was my father. The other was my stepmother, staring at him slyly from behind. I thought I was losing my mind and went downstairs to get a drink. The stress and grief must have been getting to me, I told myself. I decided I should take a few days off for my mental health. I called my boss and told him I'd be out the next day. He was understanding and told me to take all the time I needed to grieve. That night, I dreamed about how I would relax the next day. When I woke up, I saw that the painting had changed once more. Any thoughts of relaxation vanished the moment I noticed what was different. My father was climbing out of the shallow edge of the lake. My stepmother stood behind him. She was gripping a red oar tightly in her hands, raised high above her head. I realized in horror what she intended to do. I rubbed my eyes, trying to convince myself I was hallucinating. But when I looked at the painting again, it had changed yet again. My father lay dead on the shallow shore of the lake. His head was crushed and bloodied. Behind him stood my stepmother, the oar still in her hands, faint streaks of blood barely visible against the red paint. I immediately left my room and ran to the lake behind the house. The blue boat was still there, along with the two red oars. One of them had a faint red stain on its pale blade. I called the police and asked them to come investigate. As soon as I showed them the stain, the investigation into my father's death was reopened. My stepmother was arrested shortly afterwards. In prison, she would have neither. I still live in my childhood home, and Sapphire Lake remains hanging on my bedroom wall. It no longer changes. Now, only my father's figure remains, smiling softly at me from the painting.